Our guest today is Roy Ratnavel. He was a political prisoner at age 17. He moved to Canada at 18, and he started off as a mailroom boy to become Canada's top executive at one of the largest wealth management firms, and is now a best-selling author. His story is one of pure resilience and a display that the circumstances you were born in can act as a springboard to becoming extraordinary. That suffering brings out the best in us. And to those who feel like life is overwhelming, this episode is for you. Roy, thank you for coming to From the Island. Thank you for being part of it virtually.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate that.
I'd like to start off by saying that we read your book, Prisoner 1056. And as I said to you privately, it's one of the best books we've read in a very long time. It's not often that we find books that you genuinely enjoy reading from start to finish. And I don't mean to out Enosh, but he cried for at least the first 40 pages. But something that really kind of immediately caught my eye was the title itself. You kind of reduced your life to a number, Prisoner 1056. How did you go from just being that at age 17 to becoming Roy Ratnavel today?
Wow, that's a loaded question. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to tell the story. Yeah, so as you pointed out in the outset, I did land here in Canada at the age of 18 on April 19th, 1988. And alone with empty pocket, but a heart full of hope. And I did have an uncle here in Canada, but he was new to the country himself. So in all intents and purposes, I was alone. And the idea at the time was to continue my education in Canada because it got interrupted because of the unfortunate war. And my father, after my imprisonment, thought maybe there's no opportunity for a young Tamil boy like myself and decided to send me to Canada. And I always say how right he was in that assessment. So I landed here on the 19th, and 2 days later, my father was killed by IPKF at the time. And so clearly, I was very fond of my father, and he was my mentor, motivator, inspiration. And so I felt like part of me died with him on that day when I heard the news. And the other part became a fighter. And the reason for that is after his death, I thought I had to live for two people. And I thought if I did well enough in life, I could give the life that he always wanted to have. And so that became my coal for the furnace of ambition at the age of 18. And so just like any immigrant in any country, you start somewhere, especially someone like me who had no skills at all, zero skills. So you start doing odd jobs. So that's not an unusual story. I mean, there are a lot of people who have come to many nations like Canada and had to start somewhere with dishwashing or cleaning buildings and whatnot. But I don't want to subject myself to only that. And so I had to figure out a way out. And sometimes people say luck matters, and it is true. You run into people in life that will give you a hand up, and they become they take you under their wings. And I was fortunate enough to meet some of those individuals at a firm that I started as a mailroom boy. And fast forward 3 decades later, I retired in the same firm I started as a mailroom boy, as the vice chairman of the largest independent asset management company that oversaw $500 billion of Canadian assets.
That's incredible.
That's the story in a nutshell.
That's incredible.
But the journey was not a boulevard of green lights. I mean, there were a lot of hurdles. There was a lot of hardship. There's a lot of pain. But that's life. Life does give people that. Life does test people with hardship. And no matter how right things you do, life will always throw a curveball at you. And so the book really is about, how to become a victor, not a victim. And I've said always that circumstances will make you a victim, but your choices will make you remain as one. And I refused to be a victim. And I always believe the best revenge is living well. And so the book sort of, chronicled, documented my way of thinking. And my point I always made is that just because it worked for me doesn't mean it'll work for everyone. But success leaves clues. You can always look at someone who's done what you want to do, and even if you copy a small part of what they did in your own way, I think it would lead to success. And that's sort of what the book's real underlining theme is. And I said before we started recording that I don't want this book to become a story of suffering, you know, but it's a story of success. And sometimes, believe it or not, success comes through suffering. And I truly, truly believe that humans do better in adversity than in luxury. It's like going to the gym, right? Resistance makes muscles grow. Also, resistance makes people grow. If life is always easy, you will never try hard. And I'm not suggesting that means war. I'm suggesting that people need some resistance in life. I tell my son all the time, if life is always easy, you'll never know what hard part of life is. And always people become human spirit is amazing in that sense, it can withstand a lot of things. And it's really up to an individual to take agency of themselves. And that's what the book is about. Sure, the background is war, background is politics, civil war, and all that stuff. But really, at the end of the day, war isn't new to humanity. We've been warring each other since we crawled out of the caves, and we've been fighting everyone because human beings are tribalistic. But if you break down the wall, you can find common feeling within humanity as well. And that's also part of the book because one of the reasons I'm alive today is because of my dad's best friend was a Sinhalese colonel who I used to call him Uncle Fernando. If it wasn't for him, I won't be alive today. So I'm eternally indebted to that man for showing humanity to a teenage prisoner. So the book is really touches a whole bunch of different things, as you know. And I'm glad you read it. I'm glad you liked it, and I hope you guys will spread the word.
We will. So, thank you for that explanation. I'd like to actually touch upon what you were talking about because the book overarching theme is really about victory and success through hardship. So, in terms of pain and suffering, human beings, we all have that in common. All of us can say we all go through pain and suffering. So we can kind of find commonalities in that, right? But most people tend to get very broken and crippled when bad things happen to them. And then they're in a place where they can't get out of it. And kind of hearing your story, it's kind of amazing that it did not cripple you, unless it did and you came out of it, or it did not stop you. Did that pain and suffering give you some like something inside of you, a burning fire to do something about it? Why did it not cripple you?
Because I believe life will give you what you fight for once and for all. If only you could find out what you're capable of. And I knew that, like I said earlier, either blame myself as a victim or try to be a winner in life or victor in life. With my father's death, I felt like I needed to live for him, to carry on his legacy. And really, the path to happiness really begins and ends in the mind. I truly believe that. And all you can control in life is how you respond to life. Um, if you spend too much time thinking about your past, if I did that, I don't think I would have gotten here, because thinking about your past all the time won't let you be ready for the future that you desire. The trick to life is enduring all the loss and pain of life, but relentlessly pursuing the goal you set for yourself and stay positive in your mind. I know it's easily said than done, but you have to do it. Um, and there are times, and you read it in the book as well. There are times where I felt like I want to give up, and there are times I've done wrong things. And it's really, I always say there's input and output, right? And if you have a certain input, you get a certain output. You can't control the output, but you are 100% in charge of the input. So if you're not getting the output you desired, don't keep doing the same thing. Einstein said that doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result is the definition of insanity. So from the age 18 to about 31, so let's say about 12 years ish, I kept doing the same thing over and over. My input was bad. I wasn't getting the output I wanted. And no, I said to myself, I want to live for my father. I want to be successful so that he can enjoy the success he should have had. And I had no success up until early 30s. And I just because I had bad input, and I blamed everybody around me for everything that happened to me or didn't happen to me. You can transfer trauma to other people. Um, my father used to say, if you ask for sympathy, you'll get a lot of it, son, but sympathy never solves an issue. But responsibility and resiliency did. So I had to kind of change the way I thought about things. I had to change the way that I reacted to things. At the end of the day, looking at myself in the mirror, and I think I mentioned this in the book, that going to war with the man in the mirror,
Mm.
not the people you see in life, because a lot of people do that. They are at war with other people, never themselves. And so that's why I never gave up, to answer your question.
How do you do that, right? How do you truly look at yourself in the mirror and face your own inadequacies? Because that is fundamentally the problem, yeah? People can't face the reality within themselves. And so they kind of float around or just go on a tangent somewhere else, make mistakes, so on and so forth. How do you do that practically?
Yeah, you're right. The world is full of people complaining about other people, never about themselves. And and if you notice in the book, I'm very candid about my bad behavior. I was a
Mm-hmm.
terrible boyfriend, terrible fiance, terrible husband, starting out my career. Oh, sorry, my early 30s. Uh, Um, and then I realized, why am I causing so much misery around me? And then I realized it's me. And I think the world will be a better place if everybody took self-audit about themselves. Trust me, it's not easy. It's easy to blame somebody else, and I'm still not 100% there. I know, nor I ever will be. But at some point, I realized that I needed intervention. I needed uh, counseling to deal with my trauma, and so I felt that I had some form of PTSD, and which I talk about in the book, and I had to go deal with that. And so that takes some courage to do, because nobody wants to admit that there's something wrong with them. And I wouldn't say the PTSD is gone. It's always going to be part of me. It's always going to lurk beneath the surface, I say. But it's just how you respond to it. How do you control it? All you can control in life is how you respond to life and the story. And so I highly encourage listeners here, or your audience, when they watch this, is really to kind of have the self-reflection about yourself, because you can't lie to yourself. You really can't. And I was lying to myself, and I realized at some point that input had to change to get the output I desired. And when I started doing that, when I started to do that, I could see the difference in the output. So my,
What was
sorry,
what was the input that changed?
anger, outrage, rage. blaming others, treating people not nicely, and then expecting them to be nice to me, right? So that is what I needed to change. And so yeah, it was a painful lesson for me. In fact, I would say had I got it right from day one, which is a wishful thinking. You know, people make mistake and learn. That's how you learn in life. And the mistake I made was that. But the biggest mistake I learned was I didn't turn around quickly. You know, it I was for about a decade I kind of did the wrong things. I was doing all the right things in terms of working hard and looking for opportunities, but I was going about the wrong way of getting there. Um, and so eventually when I realized it also takes a certain level of maturity in life, and I think early 20s, I wasn't mature enough. I was just a brat. Early 30s, I started thinking like a man, and how a boy became a man could be a better title for the book, to be honest. But yeah, it's you know, I don't want to belabor the point, but it all comes down to really is like what you want in life. Like I always tell people, a lot of people I mentor, I said, listen, if you want to go to work 9 to 5, go home and be happy, there's nothing wrong with that life. And in fact, I think that should be admired as well. But if you think you really want to make a difference, really want to leave a legacy behind, there's got to be things you got to do that's beyond the normal behavior, right? I always say you cannot achieve something abnormal by acting normal. When I say acting normal, I'm not saying um, abnormal. I'm not saying is being weird. I'll give you one example. Would you say getting a gold medal in the Olympics is an abnormal thing? Because if it's
I'd
normal,
say,
if it's normal, we all will have gold medal, right? So what do they have to do? They have to commit themselves to a workout regimen, waking up early, working out, doing whatever they do to perfect the craft for decades to become good at the best in the world. That's abnormal behavior.
mm,
So I had to figure out what is the abnormal behavior in the context of what I was trying to achieve, right? It's really working harder than everyone and everything and keep pushing hard. You know, I had a habit of waking up at 4:30 in the morning for 25 years. And
wow.
first thing I'll do is hit the gym because I always fed physical fitness will reset how you think about yourself. Then I read publications that nobody else reads, so I want to differentiate myself. You know, in life, you have three things to be successful. You have to differentiate yourself, then you got to communicate your ideas better, then you got to appreciate your life. Differentiate, communicate, appreciate. Because you could, if, if everybody like me on Bay Street, which is the Wall Street of Canada, spoke the same language, said the same thing, why am I different? So my advice to people is that always differentiate yourself. Stand out in the crowd. Otherwise, you're just going to be one of them. So one best example is animals blend in to survive. Humans need to stand out to be noticed. But standing out to be noticed has to be a positive attribute. You know, you could be the drunkest person in the room every day and will be noticed. But what I'm saying is using positive attributes to stand out. It's the first thing you got to do. So I learned that very quickly. I was competing with a lot of tall, blonde men with blue eyes. I'm a not that tall brown guy. And why would people want to invest money with this guy? And I had to come up with a differentiation strategy, which I did. Second is communicating your idea. The thing I teach young kids today is that communicate well, verbally and in written format, because you could have the best idea in the world. If you don't know how to pitch the idea, you have no idea. And the third thing is appreciation. Appreciate life. Appreciate what you have. Appreciate your parents. Appreciate your life. Appreciate your friends. And I think the problem is people always trying to compete with other people, and you'll never win that game. You never. Somebody's going to be faster than you. Somebody's going to be smarter than you. Somebody's going to be richer than you. So all you have to do is ask yourself, am I better off today than I was a year ago, 5 years ago? If the answer is yes, keep doing what you're doing. But if you're worse off than you were a year ago, 5 years ago, stop and change your input. It's pretty simple in that. And a lot of people don't want to do that, but they complain about everything around them. And that's not what I did. And thankfully, thank God I didn't do it in the last 25 years. So I'm 56 now. So from 30 to now, I have rocked it. Yeah, I would say it has been one of the best part of my life. And one of the reasons I resigned from my role, a very lucrative position on Bay Street as an executive, is that I truly believe there are three stages to life. First stage, you learn. Second stage, you earn. The third stage that I'm in, you return. You return back to society and appreciate for what you have gained in life. Because no one will ever remember me for my bank account or the car I drove or anything or the house I lived. They'll remember me or everyone for the impact you made on society, whether you uplifted a kid, helped someone, whatever that is. Um, and because I never seen a U-Haul truck behind a casket, you take nothing with you. Um, all you leave behind is positive impact. And so that's why so I'm in my third stage of life per se. Average Sri Lankan lives to be 75. So I got 20 summers left. And what are you going to do with the 20 summers, right? And you can only give back three things to society. If you notice, I talk about three things all the time because it's a better way to communicate. Um, Only three things you can give back: time, money, expertise. That's it. Time is the easiest one, the hardest one to give. Money is the easy one to give. And the second hardest is expertise. When you're young, let's say you're learning stage or earning stage, you're not going to have time. You're not going to have money. You're not going to have expertise. So I tell people, get those things under the belt, at least have one or three or all three, so you can give back to society. And it's like flying. When you're flying, in case of emergency, unlikely event of emergency, they say put your mask on first so you can help the fellow traveler. So you can give what you don't have. So you have to gain those three things, and then you can give back. So I have a little bit of all three now. And so I decided that this is how I'm going to spend my time, to give back to society, to appreciate what Canada had done for me. I mean, if I didn't come here, I don't think I would have gained at least a little bit of success I gained in this country that gave me freedom and choice. And there are only two things human beings should be guaranteed: freedom and choice. That's it. Nothing else. When you have those two precious commodities, you'll be rewarded for the good choices you make. You'll be punished or not rewarded for the bad choices you make. And so, really, at the end of the day, everything circles back to personal responsibility, self reflection, self audit, learning, changing, evolving. Because to improve is to change. I tell young people today, and I'll tell you, young guys as well, is that don't be afraid of change, but be very, very afraid of not changing. So, all I've done all my life is just keep changing, evolving, and in your thinking.
That's an interesting point you brought up about changing. So what you're trying to say is that if you, as a human being, evolving is directly equivalent to changing, and you should always strive to change, right? So I'm curious about, in your opinion, where does that tie with, say, being content in life, right? Does that then, because I would say that, okay, being content is a great place to be in life. And in that situation, if you are content, you're less likely to want to change. So where does that tie in with what you just mentioned? I'm curious.
Yeah, I mean, being content is great, and nothing wrong with that. But the reality is, a lot of people, they say they're content, but they're competing with other people while they're content. So I'll give you one example. Like if you look at today's politics, at least in North America, in Canada, for an example, it's about saying, well, look at that guy or look at that girl. They have more than I have, therefore they should be taxed and they should be brought down. So it's not about empowering other people, it's about bringing people down. So for me, if someone who said, "Oh, I'm just going to be happy to boil some rice and have some potato and watch a movie and be content," that's great. I mean, I wish I could do that. I have a great friend of mine who just greatest friend ever, great husband, great father, content. But it's very rare to find that. And if people can do that, that's great. But even if you are content, you can evolve your thinking on many things. Like the stuff that I used to believe when I was in my 20s, um, I laugh at myself. I can't believe I believe these things, right? Because human mind should evolve over time for the better. Sometimes I do meet my former friends from Sri Lanka. Some of them are living in Canada and other parts of the world. It's shocking to me how they still think like a 15-year-old boy, you know? And there's some innocence to that, but it doesn't really makes you win in life. And the reality is, you have to deal with reality in reality's terms. So, being in Canada for me, going in, trying to compete against mostly Caucasian competitors, I had to change my thinking. I can't just say, well, this is what I believe. And that's not to say selling yourself out. Never forget where you came from. But you got to adapt and evolve. And if you don't do that, you're never going to get, if I'm talking about success, I'm not talking being content. But if you say to yourself, look, I want to achieve this target of whatever that is, you could be a great musician, you could be um, whatever the success definition of
Your
success
personal
is,
goal is.
then you have to change. But if you're just content being not changing, man, I wish I could be that way. But I'm a type A personality. I got to keep driving hard. And I've been retired for 2 years. I hardly have time. I'm always running around. I mean, I'm doing this podcast and I got to run down to the business district for a meeting. And then I'm meeting a Hollywood producer. Hopefully it'll turn into a movie. So I'm constantly driving at this. Yeah, it's side story. He read the book and he made the movie Hotel Rwanda. And
I love that.
yeah, and he reached out to me, and we had 2 meetings already, but he said, "I see potential here for a movie." Uh, we'll see. I mean, these things take a long time. I'm not resigned to the fact that it's going to be a movie, but I'm also not going to give up.
Just a side question, Roy. Who would you want to play your character in the movie?
I think in the book I said Matt Damon, but he's got to get a he's got to get a
Did you
10.
write it?
Um, but I think Dev Patel could be a good choice. And I heard we're trying to pitch the idea to him through this producer. I don't know. I don't know whether you can find someone good looking enough to play me though.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
It would be a fantastic movie. It really would.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Wow.
Thank you. We'll
Yeah.
see. I mean, movies take 6, 7 years from the inception of the idea, but or maybe this becomes like an Amazon Prime series, like 3 or 4 parts or something like that. I also have a meeting with the Amazon president, so we'll see.
That's
Okay,
awesome.
good luck for all of that.
Yeah, thank you.
Rooting. Yeah.
Roy, I just before, kind of like it kind of skips my mind, but considering the injustice and the pain that you were talking about you being angry and, kind of your behavior was not in accordance with people's wishes, let's say. It was, how do you think that anger is required to fuel one's ambition, to sustain one's ambition, if you use that anger and that feeling of injustice to your benefit?
Yeah, I think that you're
That's
spot on
necessary?
that. I mean, it's how you channel the anger, right? And some people sadly get sucked into that, the anger funnel, and they can become alcoholics or substance abusing, or just I know stories of that nature as well. And the the hardest part is really figuring out, because revenge is a terrible motive. um
Mm.
I used to think that was my motive. Just be vengeful about this stuff. And then you had to take a philosophical take on this, and say, sure, there was a war, and when there's a war, they're not going after Ratnavel, right? It just, I happen to get caught in the dragnet of this nonsense. And then I think about the present time, which was terrible. And I've seen my friends die in front of me and things like that. And that never comes out of your brain. It's always there. You can't unsee that. But then, see, the other side of it is someone who was a friend of my father, who himself was a colonel in the army, came in and took me to safety. So I was lucky in that sense. Um, I think sometimes if you have to really, it's such an injustice to people who helped you if you just go into that resentful revenge manifesto. I used to think I gotta live for the people who took the time to save me, gave me the opportunity to come to Canada, which was my father, and people here that I highlight in the book, Mr. McRae and Raymond Chang and Bill Holland, who's my mentor still. He lives not too far from here, and we meet up once in a month. And these people were, life is sometimes random, sometimes it's not. And so I had to kind of have this sort of burden of, um, how do I repay um, my my gratitude to these individuals played a role in my life. Colonel Fernando, who saved me, my father, who sent me out here, and then these three individuals who gave me opportunity in this country. The only way to do that is to do what they did to me to someone else, right? Um, if I can save somebody from their mental anguish, I donated a good amount of money to the hospital here for mental health services, um, and that hopefully will save somebody. I mentor a lot of young people, like I was mentored when I was in my early 20s. And then to reward my father, or to appreciate his, show gratitude to him, is really to now live for him and leave the Ratnavel legacy, whatever that is. So all those things sort of came together, where I thought I should just live, damn it. My father, when at the airport at Katnaika at the time, said to me, "Don't just survive, live." And that was a very powerful statement. And I want to live, not survive. And I was surviving for the first decade in this country. It's very transactional living. You go to work, get a paycheck, come home, go to work, get a paycheck, come home. Transformational is what I want to do, is like hopefully impacting positively people around me, the society, the country. And hopefully one day I will get a chance to come to Sri Lanka. And the nation need healing. And I think it's hopefully can move away from all the divisiveness and destruction, and to become a nation of hope and flourish. And it has everything, um, whether the education, the people, the food. People ask me, should I visit Sri Lanka? And I said, of course you do. I said, why? I said, well, in one country, you'll get Hawaii, you'll get Jamaica, you'll get, you know, Whistler, BC, which is the mountainous region, all in one in a small nation, with amazing food, great beaches, very nice people. And I'm probably the biggest advocate for the Sri Lankan tourism. Um, and I think that nation, what it went through for the last 4 decades, it's unconscionable to me. Um, and we can sit here and point fingers at who started it and who ended it. But hopefully, you know, I think, just like personal thing, the nations go through these type of struggles. First step in fixing a problem, understanding there is a problem. And so I think maybe currently the country is understanding there's a problem and trying to do its best. And I don't know the local politics. I don't know where it's going. I have no opinion on the government. I'm just saying that it's all about freedom and choice. You give people freedom and choice, leave them alone, and then give them security, and they'll do the rest. And that's is true for many nations which are successful. Like Canada is a shining example of that. Because I could leave after this call and have a certain level of guarantee that no one's going to come after me because I look the way I look, you know? Um, and so I think those things are fundamentally important for humanity. I see it here every day with the young Tamil entrepreneurs. You know, I, I was in a room the other day. There's $1 billion of venture capital that was sitting in the room. I was speaking in, and I was thinking that brain should have been in Sri Lanka right now, not in Canada, right? Which is a sad thing to say.
So on that
But
note, would you encourage people to still come to Canada from Sri Lanka, or they should stay in the country?
I would say Canada has its own struggles now. Um, I think Canadian economy is not in good footing. And today is actually our budget day. I think we clocked $100 billion of deficit. And it's only going to get worse. And the Canadian economy, like, it's not the Canada that I moved to. 30 years ago, so much opportunity for young people. And now they're all leaving to the US or Dubai or things like that. So I would say Canada isn't what it used to be. So be very careful about coming to Canada at the moment. I know a lot of people in Sri Lanka. I work with some young entrepreneurs in Sri Lanka. I think they're doing really amazing things. Um, you know, Yarl IT is it's a tech hub in Jaffna that a friend of mine, a few of them started, and I'm not involved in it, but I I I look at what they're doing. I think it's going to be a good positive change to Sri Lanka, and I think a lot of young minds. I do a lot of you know video content creating with young guys in Sri Lanka, and they do amazing work. And so yeah, there's young, talented people who can do many things from Sri Lanka than leaving Sri Lanka. I mean, listen, it's another month is going to be knee deep of snow. You don't want to be here for this. You want to be in Sri Lanka on a beach after work.
Fair enough.
I mean, could you elaborate a little bit, if you don't mind, on what exactly has changed? Do you think is what's the biggest change you've seen in Canada? In Canada, since the time you, I mean, first got there and now, I mean, based on the things you just said.
Yeah. Canada went from a land of opportunity giving to a land of grievance. And I just said this earlier, you talked about content, and people say, oh, they're content with what they like, but they want to take from me and give it to someone who doesn't do what I do. You know what I'm saying? So risk taking is what lifts countries, right? I've taken a lot of risk in this country. I invested in the company I worked in. I kept investing in the stock in the company, became one of the shareholders in the company without knowing if that's going to ever go up. I mean, yeah, in hindsight, you could see, oh, I've done well. So now the government wants to take away from me my risk-taking, uh, what do I made taking risk? And I believe in paying taxes, because the roads are built by public funding, the defense is public funding, the transit is public. So I've used all that. So I know. So I have to pay. But there is a limit as to how much they take away from me. So what happens is when you start, let's say between you two, say I took you, one of you didn't do enough work and the other one is doing all the work, but I pay you guys exactly the same amount. Why would a guy who works hard wants to, work hard anymore? He's going to say, I'm going to get paid. Yeah. So that's the bedrock of building a nation, risk taking, adding value and outworking everybody. So if I didn't be rewarded by the company I worked for because everybody else did shitty job but I did really well, and then I just stopped working. And so that's where Canada is now, where it's really the tribalistic politics, right? So if it's not racial politics, it's about elitism. Oh, look at Roy is living in a nice house. We have to tax that house now, right? I mean, so
The part where you mentioned that, sorry, Roy, the part about where you mentioned that in the book about your conversation with this lady who said that you were white because you were was hilarious.
yeah, I know,
Yeah.
because I mean, I live in a nice place. Just for the sake of this conversation, I'm not bragging. The property tax in this house doubled in the last 5 years, right? And I go, okay, that's fine. I think about it as a shareholder. Let's say I'm the shareholder of the city. What am I getting in return? Well, everything is worse. The crime is up. Traffic is awful. Homelessness is horrible. So what am I paying for? And so I think that's why I think this country it really needs awakening. And this is the complacency part, right? I always say ABC: arrogance,
All right.
bureaucracy, complacency. And those things lead to destruction of people, corporation, companies, cultures, and also countries. And I think this is where we are. And hopefully Sri Lanka will get out of those three things and start having less arrogant. I'm not saying you guys are arrogant, um, and have less bureaucracy, less complacency. Um, you have to Complacency breeds failure, and you got to keep pushing, and you got to enjoy life. And I'm thankfully I say somewhat content about what where I'm at, and I'm thankful for that, appreciated for that. And I think people who doesn't appreciate um, those who have helped them, those who have supported them, uh, doomed to fail in life. And I never met a unappreciative, happy person in my life. And so I think that's the word to take away. And I guess maybe I'm also getting older, getting a little more philosophical, but uh, it's really, there's no other way to live than to just look at yourself every day and go, do I like this person?
Right.
And you can't lie to yourself. And you can lie to everybody else. And I've done it, but you can't lie to yourself. And because yourself will keep telling you that you need to change, otherwise you're going to destroy yourself. And I think that's really we want to take one thing away from this conversation or the book, is that it's like really it comes down to you at the end of the day. Human spirit can be broken, but not that easily. It's very resilient. And I think I am one living example of that. And there are thousands of them out there. They're in Sri Lanka, they're in Canada, they're around the world. And that's why this book resonated, because it's a story of humans. And it's not story of failure or suffering. It's about success. And I get thousands of emails throughout the year, and they're not all Sri Lankans. They're all non-Sri Lankans who relate to the story. And that was the thing. I wanted to write this book for non-Sri Lankan audience.
That's totally fair. I mean, thanks
It
for
is.
sharing that. If I'm to just, I want to pick your brain a little bit on this one paragraph I was reading. I'm just curious to hear, just kind of dive a bit deeper into this, right? So, in page, I think this is the chapter that's called "The Traveling Salesman," page 131. Right, so you talk about here, if I'm to just quote you, you say, I tried to understand myself, I wanted to be a victor, but I behaved like a victim. I was always thinking that when something didn't go my way, it was someone else's fault. I argued for my weaknesses. Winners don't behave that way. So I guess my question here is, what exactly does it mean to be a victim here?
Oh yeah, I mean, so I'll give you my own story, right? So I said earlier when I was around my 30s, things weren't going my way. I wasn't getting successful in business. I wasn't successful in marriage. So I blamed everything around everybody else. So we're coming back to the same theme again here, right? I was arguing for my weaknesses. My weakness being quick to temper, or blaming other people for everything that went wrong in my life. So that's arguing for your weakness. Winners don't do that. They take responsibility. They assess, self-audit, move forward. And it's like, even in business, right? So for an example, if you invested in something and you try everything you did, but it didn't pan out the way you thought, then you try to change the input. If not, you cut and run. And so my thing was, again, coming back to the input. And this theme runs through the book, right? At least from chapter 3 onwards. And so, like, if you really think about the book in sort of, again, 3 components, I would say traumatized, transformed, that's the middle part, the traveling salesman, and then triumph, right? And so that's the way to look at this book. In fact, when I went to Penguin, they said, can you show me the story arc on this? And I got up and wrote that on the board, and I said, traumatized, transformed, and triumph. And the guy said, got it. And that's how it came. And the book itself got it published by Penguin Random House, which is the Cadillac of English publishing publisher in the world. And publishers don't buy manuscripts anymore. Like, there's no money in publication. This book is not written to make money. Otherwise, I know how to make money, not by selling books. But I want to tell a story of potential. What can happen if nations behave? What can happen if people behave properly? But to do that, I have to also highlight all the horrible things I did or things I didn't do right, because I never liked the biography that I read. When you read it and it's like, when you put the book down, the author comes off like a hero, then I know they haven't told the full story. So that's the thing you're reading, because I'm admitting to myself that that I was arguing for my weakness, and winners don't behave that way. Does that make sense?
That makes total sense.
From traumatized to transformation. So I'm theorizing, but you said you had 10 hard years in Canada, and prior to that was obviously much harder. So that was kind of the transformation period. What would you say to someone who feels extremely trapped? As you know, Roy, like in Canada, North America in general, there's a crisis of young men feeling purposeless, meaningless. It's a big problem. And I would say that is true even in this part of the world, right? It's just not shown as much. But what do you say to someone who feels trapped, who feels like they have potential but are in that period of transformation? And transformation is hard, right? To shed your skin and like put on something new. How do you get through that?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. There is, and I don't even know if it's, a lot of psychologists talk about social media and how it um, impacted people's psyche. For an example, especially among teenage girls, I read the other day that they look at, these reels of people posting things, living fake lives, right? There was one I read about this young woman would go to these high-end furniture stores. They have these displays, and she'll sit there and film herself as though it's her house, it's her own home. And then her followers look at that and go, "Oh my God, she's only 27. Look at what she has
Right.
achieved." And they feel reduced, they feel less. And so I would start by saying, again, as something I mentioned earlier, I think really just saying to yourself, am I better off today than yesterday? That question has to be asked. These young people should say, and what do I want to achieve? Do I want to achieve something? And for me, it really comes down to that. There's no real like silver bullet solution to solve this issue. And if anyone who's right now or whenever they listen to this feeling like they haven't achieved, um, or they feel lost, and my answer to that is, look, I hear you. I've been there, and I say this over and over that we all deserve the life we desire. But it really comes down to us trying to get it. And I think I said it maybe here or somewhere else that I felt that I don't deserve the life I get. I deserve what I fight for. So whatever the one you think you deserve, that is a broad spectrum of things. It could be, I deserve to be a great athlete or whatever that. So you have to put the work into it. And for me, I just thought I deserved to have safety. I deserved to be having success on Bay Street, and but that didn't come with somebody just giving it to me because nobody does that. And you know, Viktor Frankl, who was a Holocaust survivor, he said, uh, "Purpose in life is what drives human, and find that purpose, whatever that is, not the passion." People always say, find your passion and go after it. And that's a complete BS. Find what you're
Yeah.
good at, then
Mm.
chase that with your passion and dedication and discipline. Everyone's good at something. There's got to be something that someone's good at. You could be a painter, a finger painter, or something. Like whatever that is, chase that. Don't stop chasing somebody else's passion, right? So that's why misery happens, because you're chasing someone else's success. Um, I always wanted to be in the NBA, 6'9", playing in the basketball league in North America, but I'm not even close to six. Um, and no matter how much I train, I'm never going to be in the NBA. So that wouldn't be my skill. That's my passion. So I have to find out
Right.
what my skill is. My skill, I've learned that I'm very good in, at least at the time, in conveying ideas to investors. I know how
Mm.
to go to a room and read the room and pitch an idea to raise capital. And without capital, companies can't function. So I was able to get good at it. I wasn't great at it, but I knew I was good at it, or maybe reasonably okay at it. Then I had to put a lot of work into it. I used to every Sunday, a couple hours, I would sit in front of the mirror and rehearse every meeting I was going to do that Monday to
Really?
Friday. I used to do 80 meetings. Uh, I was asked to do 80 meetings. I will rehearse everything, and I will research on the client, what they like, what they don't like. So let's say if somebody is good at golf, I'll have a little bit of golf story somewhere mixed into the thing. If they're into running or cycling, something, because people want to buy you before they buy your product. And if
Right.
they like you, they'll do business with you. And I always tell business people, don't turn your friends into clients, turn your clients into friends. And you're far likely to sell something to a client than to a friend. And so I became really reasonably good at it, and I became exceptionally good at it, uh, where I ended up raising billions of dollars for this company. And there was a time, my team, I had a team of 200 people. We are responsible for raising 20, $30 billion a year in capital. And it's not an easy feat. And no one ever did that in the company. And I didn't do it alone. I mean, nobody wins alone. There's the team. You got to figure it out. You got to lead them. And so you get good at something, and then you start investing your time and money. And public speaking is another one that I was terrible at. How do you pitch an idea if you don't know how to talk? And so I had to go learn how to speak publicly and body language and spend money on that. And even now I do keynote speaking. I have a coach. I go and get tuned up a little. And so these are the things, like find out what you're good at. That's the skill. And then go after it with your dedication, discipline, and passion and all that. But don't ever listen to anyone who says follow your passion. That's just bad advice from people who are already rich.
Interesting. What would you do? You think that there's a fine line between kind of like ambition, humility in ambition, and ruthlessness? Because in your book you do talk about that, right? About fighting for what you want. Is there? I would say there's a fine line. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, you mean that ambition can cross into what was your question angle here?
So how would you go about it to achieve your ambition, right? Because you would want to be humble about it, but then if you want to fight, there are times you may have to be ruthless, and you may hurt people in the process, and some people don't want to go through all of that, right? Would you say that's a fine line that we have to just make peace with?
Well, it's a good question. I always say, everybody wants success until they see the price tag.
Yeah.
And the price tag is sleepless night, less time with your family, um, sometimes even peace of mind. It comes at a cost. And if the cost is unbearable, then clearly nobody wants um, to go down the path. Like when I was uh, working and raising capital around the globe, I used to take about 125 flights a year.
Oh.
So I would be in a plane at least 3 to 4 times a week. I'm only home Friday nights, and then I'm gone Sunday. So going around the globe, I start in Toronto, London, Hong Kong, Sydney, Melbourne, Vancouver, home. And that's around the globe. But that means missing out. I call it emotional deficit at home because I'm never
Okay.
home. So I didn't spend much time with my son. Yeah, I didn't spend much time with my wife. Um, so I think it comes at a cost. And did I wish that I spend more time with my son? Yeah, it would come at a cost of something else, right? I couldn't have achieved the success the household did collectively had I just spent more time at home. And it sounds awful, but you're right. There is a fine balance. So I guess then figuring out like if my wife complained the whole time I was traveling, then this couldn't have happened. And she was very supportive. My son understood, he likes nicer things in life. So he understood. Um, I know it sounds very, oh, it's just money and this and that. But
Official.
listen, money, money, money is important, but money is not everything. Um, because anyone who says money doesn't buy you happiness, they don't know where to shop. Kidding aside, I think you got to have some money so I can do other things, right? I'm not working now,
Sure.
and how can if I'm not working, I must have money somewhere. No one's going to take care of me. I gotta have my own thing. So that's the sort of the thing. And so, yeah, it did come at a cost. And I would admit that. And I think I documented in the book too, right? I was hardly ever home. I was very irritated most of the time. And because my team has to raise $150 million a day,
Wow.
a day. And so that comes at a lot of pressure. And one of the reasons I stopped is because it could lead to bad health, um, bad marriage, and being a bad father. And so I think knowing when to tap out is important, you
Okay.
know, and I did that at the age of 53. Everybody, when I retired, just shocked and couldn't believe. And I just thought personally, I was going to reverse everything I gained if I stayed on the game. So I think to answer your question, just really knowing when to fold, and
Sometimes the hardest part, right, Roy? Knowing when to fold. Was there a moment where you thought, okay, now I really need to close it?
yeah, I woke up on a Monday morning about 2.5 years ago and hit the snooze button on the alarm. I never do that. And then and, and then my wife left the house and I'm like, oh, she's like, you okay? I'm like, yeah, I just don't feel good about today. And I sat on the couch, just over there, looking outside the window, just in my boxers, shorts, and hoodie, and a cup of coffee. Only time I got up was to go to the washroom or whatnot. I didn't move from the couch for like 5 hours. Just kind of sat.
Yeah.
Then I decided that day, it was May 8th, 2023, I believe, it's Monday. And I decided that I'm going to call it in. So I sent a note to the board and the CEO and said, I want to talk.
Okay.
And I went and talked to the CEO and said, it's over for me. I'm out. And they were shocked, but they were very appreciative and supportive in the decision. And we went through the process and I retired on August 31st, 2023, only 4 months later, 3 months later. Yeah, it's the addictive nature of the rush, right? I say the kill, because you're hunting for money,
Right.
and the kill is the biggest euphoria euphoric feeling you'll ever get when you see that trade ticket hit for millions of dollars, and you're like, wow, it's better than anything that I felt in life. And so to go away from that euphoric feeling to, I jokingly said I never had to pay my cell phone bill, because I had a cell phone that paid by the company for 27 years or 34 years, whenever the cell phone came into play, I guess mid 90s or whatever, but or late 90s, whatever. And so now even to just have my own cell phone bill is weird, right? And and not having an assistant and booking my own meetings and all those things that you have to get used to. But the positive side of it is you get to do whatever you want. I don't have a board of directors. I don't have shareholders to report to. I don't have clients to report to. I don't have staff. And managing people was the hardest thing, and especially during COVID. So it's all good. And where does go from here? I think it's going to be better. My return stage is going to be better than the earning stage, by miles. And I'm happier now, because I can do the things that makes me happy, not makes my shareholders happy.
Okay. Spending time with your family, giving back to.
Yeah, I mean, that for sure. I'm off to California tomorrow to go see my son. I couldn't have done that when I was working, you know. And I can go. I always book one-way tickets now. There's no return. Like I just go whenever I go, and then I return whenever I want to return. And those are freedoms that I gain just by, putting the hard work in from 30 to 53. And that hard work was, I mean, I did 1.5 times of everybody or average person did, you know. I used to do 120 meetings a month. That's crazy, you know. I did that for 2 decades nonstop. And I worked
No?
15.
Yeah.
Hmm?
Did you not burn out?
No, I'm crazy that way, right? It's
It's the
I
fuel.
yeah, I mean it's laser focused and I would say ruthlessly pragmatic. And my wife always says, why don't you just be normal and do things in moderation? And I always say, hello, have you just met me? I don't do anything in moderation. I don't respect moderation. That's just me. I'm not saying this is an example people should live by. I'm only telling you how I got here. And people can follow some of the stuff I said. People can ignore some of the stuff I said, and that's fine. And I'm just going to tell you what inputs I had to get here. And someone told me when I was 16 years old in Sri Lanka, you're the dumbest kid I know. You'll never achieve anything in life. And that I never forgot.
Wow.
And I met that person here in Canada. He was much older and he was shocked. So reluctantly admitted that he was wrong. He never said that openly, but he saw. Every time I try to do something, someone told me I can't do it. And people always tell you that you can't do it. You can't do it. So when I went to Bay Street, they said, you can't do it, you know. And one of the things I tell people is that my people who look like us, I tell them, front office is where you want to go to, not back office. I know a lot of young people who work in the back office, smarter than the people in the front office. They look different. And don't ever settle for the back office, settle for the front office. So I settled for front office very early on, and there were not many people who looked like us on Bay Street. I was one of the very few, if not the only one. And every time I went to somebody, they said, you can't do it, you can't do it. And then I became the head of Western Canada. They said, you can't do it. Then I became the Canadian head of Canada. They said, you can't do it. Then I wrote a book and they said, you're not going to be able to publish this book. Then they said, well, you're never going to get it published by a serious publisher. Well, check, check, and check. So the point is, whenever people told me no, I heard yes. Whenever people said impossible, I heard possible. So don't listen to these people. They are there. They are always going to tell you, if everybody says no, then it's possible. That's my rule of life. And so even when I try to get this movie thing going, it's like, Hollywood won't be interested in this movie. I'm like, okay, well then I'm going to try. And so, and whether I will succeed or not, I don't know, but at least a few doors open. And it's really, I keep repeating myself. So you have to edit a lot of things out, I'm sure. But there are two types of problems in the world, which my father used to say famously: yours and everybody else's. Nobody will fix yours. You got to fix your own. And that is coming down again to self-responsibility and
How,
taking action.
No, sorry, I think there's a lag there. But no, I was just curious, because you were talking a lot about, the type of things that people said to you, things that you can't do that ultimately motivated you to do it. How do you become mentally strong enough to be able to kind of take that kind of criticism and still go on? Not many people are wired that way. Is there something that you kind of kept telling yourself every time you were kind of, disheartened by such comments? Is there something that they could do in an actionable sense, right? Because not everyone is wired that way, not everyone behaves the same way, of course. What did we understand the motivation behind, you know, your kind of progression there, but I'm curious if you have anything interesting you could tell people in general about things that they could do to be, you know, mentally strong enough to deal with these kind of critical comments from the people around them.
Including their own family.
Including their own
and
family,
friends.
maybe even their own thoughts, right? That could
Right.
affect them.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's a hard one to answer because I think in my case, I was going through this phase of people telling me you can't do it, and then I started doing things that will lead me to bad outcomes. Then I start thinking, oh, maybe they are right. I can do this. And then I thought, well, what options do I have than to try? And so I guess maybe the best way to answer that question is what choices you have other than that. Like if you want to fade into mediocrity, then are you going to be happy with that? You know, they say that the greatest regret in a human heart is unrealized potential. And you never want to be taking your last breath on a hospital bed and saying to yourself, ah, only if I did that, right? But you want to say to yourself, I did everything that is humanly possible and happy with everything I did. And then you know that's a life well lived, regardless of the outcome. Because you never want to close your eyes at night when you're sleeping, going, only if I did that, only if I did that. And there are things you're always going to think that way, because I can tell you half a dozen things I should have done right. But it's like, you know, life is like two-column balance sheet, right? Things you do right and things you do wrong. If the right column is longer than the wrong column, I think you won in life, whatever that is. Um, yeah, so I'm trying to add more right things to my right side of the column and the right column, because we're all going to have. I mean, I can give you 6 different things I did wrong very quickly, but it's I, I don't know. I mean, how long we have, but the thing is, um, success is not linear, right? It's not linear. It doesn't go on a straight line. It's like a market. It moves up, moves down. Sometimes you have to move back down to go back, test new highs. And life is like that too. And just because it didn't happen on the first go, um, it doesn't mean it can't happen on the second or the third. And so um, again, the disclaimer here is just because it worked for me doesn't mean it's going to work for everybody. But even if you just take one or two things, like I had this guy that always looked up to, wanted to become him, and not act like him, just to become the way he did things. And I can't copy somebody 100%. It won't be genuine. You got to do it in your own style. But success leaves clues. Find someone who did what you want to do and just copy a few of the pages from their playbook. In anything, whether it's sports, whether it's music, whether it's business, we all have somebody we look up to, and then try to figure out how they got there. Even if you did all the right things, sometimes life will throw curveballs at you and you'll never get there. But what will not get you for sure, being resentful. Um, Being resilient will get you somewhere. Being resentful will sure to guarantee you failure in life. And so if anybody could take away anything from my experience, as much as it was terrible at the time, the silver lining is that, because I've seen the worst of it. So I figured, how bad can this be? You know, if I went to a meeting, I go, yeah, okay. I'm not scared of these guys because I was actually in prison once. So I'm not saying people should go to prison. I'm just saying the silver lining is, at least for me, is that I never got scared of anything after what I went through. I mean, being scared is a primal human emotion. What I mean is like, you put me in a room of people I don't know, I'm gonna go pitch it. You know, Penguin said, oh, I'm not sure about the book. I'm like, just give me one chance to come in and talk to you on the board. And I did. And so I'm not scared to go into a room full of old publishers telling me why they can't publish the book. And I'm never going to take no for an answer. So,
There is one more thing I do want to ask you regarding something you wrote in your book. If I just quickly quote you, you said, "My work took me to glamorous places and hotels and some not so glamorous ones. I would be at the Ritz-Carlton, Santa Barbara for 2 weeks, blah, blah." And then you said, "One night someone tried to break into my room. I was up all night. I couldn't sleep. I was slowly starting to become soft. I would catch myself complaining about the view from my room to the front desk person, forgetting about my time in prison or sleeping in the belly of a cargo ship in filth. Then I would be ashamed of myself." And I mean, the honesty here is amazing, and it kind of feels like you started from an incredible place, you built yourself up, and then it just went full circle, and you just thought, I don't want this comfort anymore. Were you kind of lacking in meaning in that moment? Because
yeah,
of
it's the
comfort?
part they talk about complacency, right? And when things become soft, there's no resistance anymore. If there's no resistance, you don't grow. It's called muscle atrophy. Like if we are astronaut, you spend 6 months in the space, the muscles waste away. And when they come back, they can walk, right? Because the muscles have gone soft. And so in that sense, I was having some kind of muscle atrophy, where, I was in Maui at the Ritz and Santa Barbara at the Hilton or whatever. And then I go into this small towns with some travel lodge next to a methadone clinic, and somebody break into my room, and the food was terrible. The view was into the highway, and then you complain about it because you're comparing to what you left behind to what you are. So you have to kind of readjust and get the resistance back. And so I started to kind of take these things as perks of the job, not as something I deserved. And then just like right now, I have a view of you know, the only thing I care about in a hotel now is the gym, nothing else, right? So I got to a point where I asked my assistant first thing before, I don't need views, I don't need 5-star ratings. I just need the gym. So can you tell me, is it a good gym or bad gym? Because I'll take a 2-star hotel with a great gym than a 5-star hotel with a shitty gym. So it's just the mindset, changing that. And oh yeah, I remember I was at the Plaza in New York and I complained incessantly, but my view doesn't look into the Central Park. And you know, you become soft and you forget where you come from. And so you gotta always kind of have the self-check and catch yourself complaining about things that you can't, pardon me, control. And I mean, I still complain about some stuff here and there, but not like I used to. People, I don't care. If you go to a hotel on business trip, why do I even care about the view? Because I'm never there anyways. I only go there to sleep around midnight to 5 in the morning, and that's it. And it's dark outside. You can't see anything. So that told me that it's all prestige and status, and nobody cares. Like, why are you going to compare your room to your colleague's room, like yours better room? Like, how? So I started focusing on the end goal here. End goal is I wanted to, leave the business around 50s, spend the next 20 to 25 years, you know, or longer, whatever whatever the thing is, when death finds me, um, you're never going to think about, all the hotels you stayed in, any of that stuff. The only thing you're going to answer is, did I lead a good life? Did I give back? Did I at least attempted to do the right things? If the answer is right, I think you won the game. Um, Otherwise, if you're not there, if you think you're going the wrong way, it's not too late. Change. And change is hard, but you're looking at a guy who did it, so it's possible. It's funny
Amazing.
you brought up that that's a good chapter because it's really philosophical arguments there, right? You're talking about, how quickly I deserved, I thought, all these nice things when I've been in horrible situation. Um, and these are the things I'm talking about. These are the bad inputs, right? These are the bad inputs. Good input would be saying, "Hey, I'm appreciative of the room. At least I have a room to sleep in tonight,
Yeah.
where nobody's trying to hurt me." Right? That should be the point of reference is wrong. You know, the reference for me at the time was like, "Hey, how come I'm not in a 5-star hotel? Why am I in a shitty place?" Right? I should just be happy to have a warm bed and a dinner and reasonable safety, except for that guy who tried to break into my room. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's there are so many of these things in the book that there's one where I flipped the car into a ditch. That part where I talk about how all of a sudden I realize like all this is for what you know uh, to chase that dream of becoming that guy that I want to copy. And I thought this is what I always wanted. But then I leave and I go home and I sleep on the bed with my son and my wife. And I thought that was the best feeling ever. So it's the book goes through a lot of struggle, right? And it's through struggle you eventually find some kind of happiness and peace and a little bit of success. So I guess we probably should wrap it up here soon. Do you have any other final thoughts or questions?
Uh, yeah, I'm curious to know what was the hardest chapter in your book to write? Do you feel like your readers may not be getting the nuances of your perspective regarding certain chapters? If so, what are they?
I would say the chapter of my father passing, although that would be people can relate to that because somebody else lost their parent, whether war or disease, whatever, loss is a loss. Um, but I thought the hardest chapter to write is the editorial part of the book, which is the last 2 chapters, because I could have stopped around chapter 10, and the movie ends there. But I thought it's what they call the third act, right? So it's kid came to Canada, did reasonably well, and finished his book up there. And okay, that's a good story, but there are many stories like that. What is that I'm trying to say? What's the third act is hard to write it without offending people. And it went through so many reviews, reviews and rewrite because it's sort of political in nature. So I go from a personal story, which people can relate to and feel empathy for the person. That's easy to write. You can always um, evoke feelings and hit the heart easily in writing. But really to hit the mind about how a society should be structured, how countries should behave, how politicians should act, and people should behave. That part is uh, you're going to definitely offend people, right? And so that part was a tightrope walking. It still offended people, but I I never want to sanction my speech to please somebody, and you never do that. So I did my best to not to overtly offend people, but that was the hardest part. And then the other hard part was like, do I want to? How much of that my life I want to disclose without, you know, bringing my wife and my kid into it? And so there are parts. I mean, I was the book was really more honest, and then scaled down a little bit because my wife said, I really don't know. I don't feel comfortable disclosing this. And that's fine. Um, but for me, the hardest part is really emotional part of it. Like I broke down crying many times.
You live it.
Yeah, I would write late at night too, like 2, 3 in the mornings because I have to kind of balance the work. And that's another thing. This book was written in 60 days.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I wrote, it started on 2021 Easter Sunday, and then I was done in June. And
Wow.
my agent couldn't believe I banged out 95,000 words in 60 days. That's what I say, like I'm nuts that way, right? Like it's I'm crazy in that. Like if I said I'm gonna do it and it's no stopping. So I would well during COVID, so we all wrap up work at 6 p.m., 5 p.m. Toronto time. And when before COVID, I will have a dinner that night and I don't come home till midnight. So every night. And so no traveling for 2 years. So I thought, if I want to ever to write a book, this is the time. It'll never happen otherwise. And so forcible confinement at home. So I started banging off these things, and yeah, I'll write around 7 p.m. I'll go till 3 in the morning, and then I'll go to bed, get a couple hours of sleep, get to the gym downstairs, work out, back in the office room. Did that for 60 days, and got a book. And but the editing part took 22 months. Um, it went through 38 revisions. Um, where I am sitting here right now is where I would stand and edit, 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 try to perfect every single sentence, the word, the paragraph, the page, the chapter, the book. And it takes time and dedication. And sometimes what irks me is sometimes people sort of, you know, just say, oh, I have a book too. I have a story too. I could write a book as well. I'm like, yeah, you should. And it's not easy, but you should. People think you just kind of put random thoughts on page. It has to make sense to a reader. It has to have a value prop. You can't just say I went to store and bought a fish and came home. That's not a story, right? There's no
Yeah.
soul in it. And even remember the beginning of the book, the way I painted the picture of the Point Pedro and the fish market. And so my good friend John Kay, who introduced me to all these amazing people, and he said to me, "Don't write a blog, write a book."
Mm.
And so that means tell them what your mom cooked, tell them what you saw on the street, tell them what you saw as a kid when you woke up in the morning, tell them everything, the sound, the smell, the scene, all the stuff. And so you don't get to, I went to fish market and bought a fish. You explain everything, and buying the fish is really the last sentence, right?
Yeah.
So painting that mosaic uh, is really the hardest thing to do. But I got good at it eventually. It was struggle because I'm not a professional book writer, author. I'm an amateur guy. But I think for an amateur, it did come out all right. And so of 95,000 words, book ended up being 87,000 words. An editor may have added 1,500 words,
Wow.
something, just to move things around and make some connection bridges to the paragraphs and things like that. But it took 22 months of just painstaking edits. There's so many edits. You have to go through style edit to copy edit to factual edits. I mean, if I said this happened on this day, like we got to make sure it really did happen on that day, or not the other day. So it's yeah, I don't think I could write it now because I mean I could write it now because I'm not working, but assuming if I'm working now, it's impossible. You don't have time to do this. And so yeah, I mean there are many dark nights where I had to, cry in the room by myself and get through it. And then got my therapist to work with me a lot. These are things that happens because you're trying to everything that was buried in the head for 35 years, it's unearthed again, and you had to go through it. But yeah, I'm happy it turned out. I'm happy you guys like the book. I'm not done yet.
Loved
Loved
it.
it. Loved it.
I'm hoping one day I can translate the book in Sinhala as well, but I got to find the right person to do it. But we'll see. I'm working on the Tamil version, which is taking a lot longer than I thought because things don't translate well in other languages, right? So,
Thank you, Roy. This
Thank
was
you so
really
much.
good.
all right, gents, I'm gonna have to go now.
Yes.
Thank you so much for joining. And
It was a pleasure.
we hope to see you in Sri Lanka soon.
Yeah, absolutely.